Twitch and YouTube. Hello there, Twitch and YouTube. I think the description is wrong again today because I'm a silly goose. But yeah, welcome Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, and I'm also on Discord if you want to body double there while listening. And thank you to everybody who's come in from Marley's live. Thank you very, very much for the mini raid. Understood, Moss. Enjoy being on set. It's a lot of fun, and I miss being in theater. I miss being in the acting world in general. But yeah, it's enjoy it. So if you're following along, I'm going to play some royalty-free background music because Twitch and YouTube don't like playing more than 10 seconds of anything that has rights attached to it. Oh, you too. But I'm gonna put the volume down as well. And I hope all of you are okay. Have you had water? Have you had your meds? Have you eaten something? And have you said something kind about yourself today? I know that last one is where a lot of people are not doing the thing, so please think about the kindest thing you can say about yourself and say it to yourself in the mirror if you have to. And say it to yourself until you believe it, even if you don't believe it right now. I'm having to do that now. I just take the meds that come with the water. Understandable. So we are on page 159 of Abolition, Feminism now. Thank you. And today the goal is back to 90 because Kiara did a Kiara thing. W Kiara, although she's not here. Yes, we are on page 159. We stopped last week talking about political movements and social movements that seek to eradicate carcerality but institute radical systemic change. So it's one thing to be abolitionist. It is another thing to actually go out. Yay! Thank you. Thank you so much, Moss, on Twitch. It's one thing to be abolitionist, and it is another thing to... Oh, welcome. It's another thing to actually do the social movement work that eradicates the need for carcerality. And so there is a misconception that a revolution will come quickly and it will be a victory for the working class. It's not going to be. It is what the title of this section of the book is called, The Long Haul, because we have a lot of work to do and we have very little time in which to do it. Because the ruling class, I should say, is accelerating. It's not just its ability and want to attain more and more wealth at the expense of the people, but they're just doing it a lot faster. They're accelerating their plans to essentially create this worldwide oligarchy, and we're seeing it now. We're seeing it with, I think the wool was pulled over our eyes for so damn long, but it was lifted on October 7th because the jailbreak from the Gaza Strip was a radical act of decolonization. And that has kind of pushed us into a sense of conscientization where we know the work that we have to do. We just need to find the means to do it. And a lot of people don't know where to start. But we have to decide whether we are here for the long haul or we are here just to say, hey, we're on the right side of history, and just leave it at that. So we begin. In the fall of 2018, in a courthouse packed with uniformed officers surrounded by protesters, Van Dyke was convicted of the lesser charge of second-degree murder and received a sentence of 81 months. No one was satisfied with the sentence. The city had handed the first the city had handed down to a patrolman convicted of murder in almost 50 years. The Illinois Fraternal Order of Police protested the sham trial and shameful verdict. Some black community leaders were outraged by the leniency of the court, when Illinois prisons were overflowing with people serving multiple lifetimes for murder rather than time meted out in months. As of this writing, the Illinois Attorney General and the special prosecutor in the case were appealing to lengthen Van Dyke's sentence. As the conversation about how to hold this officer and the new wider Chicago Police Department accountable continues, new starting places for struggle emerge. Not long after the trial concluded, and after the largest closure of public schools in any district in the world, Chicago accelerated its plan to build a new $95 million police training academy. Whew. On the heels of the verdict, when the vision and practice of safety was actively being re-envisioned and policing denaturalized, the No Cop Academy campaign and coalition emerged to challenge the building of this expensive state-of-the-art training academy. Thank you. The No Cop Academy campaign produced savvy political educational materials, orchestrated creative direct actions, and did the everyday hard work of political education on public transport, in neighborhoods, and across social media. I want to say, a lot of us do this work on social media because it's the thing that we have. Social media is a part of the work. When we say that we work, this is a job. This is how much I make today. And behind it is reviewing the materials for reading, breaking down each chapter, making notes, and saying, okay, this is what I need to talk about today. These are the things that we need to break apart and distill down to its root. Behind this reading is a lot of work. And then it's maintaining the Discord, making sure that books are loaded into the onto the Discord, the relative Discord channels, making sure that everybody has access to it, everybody can open the file, save it, and showing people how to put these files onto their Kindles and how to load things onto their iPads, little things like that. Behind just reading and distilling all of these concepts, Hairu, is the work that goes on to make these readings actually happen. Just like that, we have to have the work in the background to educate people about the issues that they are facing, not just in their cities, but with the institutions that surround them and supposedly protect them. And I hate it when the slash girl comes up because it's like, oh, no stress if you don't have anything. Like, this is if you can. And the work of political education takes place, Sean, on many, many platforms. Social media, TikTok is just one of them. It's why I still have Facebook. Thank you, B. It's why I still use Twitter. And mind you, Twitter is the only thing we did name. But when you are faced with a multi-million-dollar academy for cops where critical race theory was not being taught, just by the way, you have months of training for your police, whereas in a place like Sweden, you have to have a bachelor's degree to be a cop. When you have multi-million-dollar places going into building an academy for cops, and then you read the fine print and you see that they are going to be trained by the IDF, you have to ask yourself who is benefiting, because they're going to have to make that money back somehow. So who is going to be benefiting? more often than not, it is your politicians who have people in their back pockets, and it's private prison systems. If you have a chance, and if you remember, please go and look up direct provision. Direct provision is a system in Ireland. When people say that Ireland is a beautiful country, I'm like, yeah, it absolutely is. I would move there in a heartbeat. But there's this thing that they do called direct provision that basically puts asylum seekers in privately funded housing, and they wait up to 14 years for their asylum to be approved. And in the meantime, they cannot work, they cannot send their children to school, and they cannot integrate with Irish society, regardless of what the status of their... Thank you, my love.
I didn't do that, you did that.
Oh, I did, yes, I did.
I'm gonna sort out my breakfast and go to bed.
Okay, I need a nose boop, though. Boop. Okay, I love you. Good night. Yeah, direct provision is basically the prison system just for asylum seekers. They're not allowed to integrate into Irish society. And when people say Ireland is beautiful, it is one of those places I would love to move to. I would love to move to just to the outskirts of Dublin, you know, or even better, Galway, because I'm in absolute love with Galway. But they have these systems. It is still a very much a white supremacist society that is built on the old kind of white supremacy. Like, yes, we may be working class. Yes, we may be the downtrodden of the past, but at least we're not black or brown. It's a good playlist. So, educating yourself on things like that. A lot of people here, I'm sure a lot of you didn't know about direct provision. That kind of education takes a lot of legwork. It takes a lot of work to attain the knowledge, to distill that knowledge down to a way you can explain it to people, and then get the educational materials out. And this is why we say that it is the long haul. Yeah. Now, China's a very much a maybe. The education talked about how the $95 million earmarked for the new academy could be invested to really make communities, particularly black and brown neighborhoods, safer. The Coins, Cops and Communities toolkit, produced by the campaign, made visible the deep asymmetries and ethical dimensions of a city budget. For example, Chicago's annual budget for substance abuse, over $2.5 million, amounts to what Chicago spends on half a day of policing. While the city voted to approve construction on the new police academy in late 2019, No Cop Academy expanded the political consciousness and translated abolitionist visions into practical demands. Over 120 organizations signed and agreed that contracting the power and scope of policing is a common and achievable goal. This is an enormous win. As Chicago organizer Benji Hart noted, the coalition lost the vote but changed the narrative on police spending. The No Cop Academy campaign moved a wide range of organizations, many of which had not centered policing or abolition, to create new starting points for always emergent struggles. And you can see how everything is linked to, from how people perceive safety to how we get to abolition. It's a long pipeline. But there is different forms of understanding that come along the way. And with those different forms of understanding and understanding the different systems at play, it is imperative for us to see not just the linkages between cops and the state, but cops and ideology. everyday ideology. The No Cop Academy campaign moved a wide range of organizations, many of which had not centered policing or abolition, to create new starting points. For example, in August 2020, when the Chicago Board of Education voted after a lengthy debate not to repeal its contract with the Chicago Police Department, an emergent campaign, Cops Out of CPS, built on earlier conversations about abolition and labor unions to rapidly organize teach-ins over Zoom and direct actions that targeted the Board of Education. I attended some of these teach-ins just to see what they were about, and the kind of materials that they were producing were fantastic. Emphasizing that budgets are indications of priorities and values, the No Cop Academy and Cops Out of CPS campaigns built on prior work of abolition feminist organizers to disentangle public safety from policing. And disentangling both of those concepts is important, because when you disentangle the concepts, what you're basically doing is building ideas in the minds of people to imagine something better. This work was aligned with research illustrating that the majority of calls to police are not about quote-unquote crime, but about the need for support or services. And the fact that you have to call 911 for everything, and the cops arrive however long later, but they're the first to get there, is diabolical. As historian and scholar activist Nicole Siegel documents, police actually spend very little time dealing with the invented category of crime. They say, the things police do that don't have to do with crime could and should be done by other bodies: social workers, EMTs, firefighters, traffic directors, garbage collectors, counselors, neighborhood associations, friends, and so on. The fact that we cannot call our friends, that we are quicker to call the cops than we are to call our friends when we are in need of something, just shows how individualism has completely stripped us of a concept of community. How many times do you debate with yourself before asking a friend for help? That, not so incidentally, is the core of a practical, stepwise process of police abolition. Begin to give non-violent agencies, piece by piece, the tasks that are currently allocated to the men and women in blue. Non-violent agencies. Because the cops, the policing system in the US especially, is a violent agency. This research has grounded a platform of police abolition actions nationally, including campaigns to reduce calls to 911 and to decouple or disentangle healthcare services from law enforcement. Abolition feminism is helping to seed the soil that makes this work imaginable. This is the slow work of ongoing political education and coalition building, and can be painstaking because of the way that coalition spaces are often no one's home. As civil rights organizer and musician Bernice Johnson Reagan reminded us in 1981. Detailed and relational, this is necessary labor, almost never compensated or acknowledged, and often falling to feminists, particularly women of color, demonstrating also that building radical community can be contagious, joyous, and the beauty that propels the experiment in living otherwise. And I love that. Because how many organizations have you seen headed by white people that have just fed into the system? Daughters of the Confederacy, anyone? So we get to beyond success or failure. These scattered small grassroots campaigns and organizations in a single city are only one part of the history of abolition feminism in Chicago. If known at all, they are likely viewed as disconnected, potentially even failed as projects, a laundry list of small organizations that fizzle without passing legislation or achieving anything. Other failures. They mount. Despite a powerful campaign led in part by Insight in 2017, US Palestinian Chicago area activist Rasmia Odeh was deported. Many of the small groups described in this chapter have shuttered and are no longer in operation. Some of these campaigns involved only a handful of people. Most of their work never reached mainstream media. Through one lens of the list of our failures is, though one lens of the list of our failures is long, an event had a small turnout. A lone charismatic part-time staff member was fired. A project ran out of resources and steam and vanished without a trace. Tensions caused the group to fracture. No one wanted to work as a collective anymore. In the context of the uprisings of 2020, many of these small groups, campaigns, and events have been forgotten or remain invisible. Not only do they deserve to be recognized as harbingers of radical shift, but more critically, their erasure weakens our ability to struggle collectively for the long haul. These forms of structural erasure, a learned and organized epistemology of ignorance, is far from arbitrary. Our feminist, queer, women of color histories of resistance and organizing are impoverished by intention, often lethally, and few traces remain of these powerful and often highly local campaigns that built coalitions across borders, pushing back on forms of state violence, expanding imaginations about safety and community, and seeding shifts in language and culture. It's important to acknowledge that it is not just often led by women of color, women and femmes of color. It is the most marginalized people in any group that have these kind of small groups. But where there is a larger body, to have the work centralized is not always the way to go. Because you pick your battles. You have to pick your battles. I'm on decolonization, especially in the feminist sense. I'm a writer. I want to educate people through writing, sometimes through humor, sometimes through misguided means. But by and large, all of this work is mostly done by the most marginalized people because we have the most to lose. We have to get the work done, else nobody else will. Where do you think the Black Lives Matter grassroots movement is today? And I actually want to know your answers. This is not a rhetorical question. Where is the Black Lives Matter grassroots movement today? Do you know? Anyone? No one? Well, I can tell you that there's a monthly press briefing tomorrow. It's still here. Still doing work. And still seeking justice for Keith Porter. They're still doing grassroots work. And they are focused on the killing of Black Americans by law enforcement. And for a little bit, I'm going to be away from the screen. part of the larger scheme of erasure by empire that wants to see our movements forgotten. And please don't forget that I do these readings for free, so if you can make a dent in this goal, that would be greatly, greatly helpful. As you know, I was doxed and fired earlier on this year, and I'm still trying to recover from that. Thank you so much, my love. This erasure is made more facile by dominant metrics for success and failure, created by the very systems and institutions that reproduce and naturalized racist and heteropatriarchal violence. For example, the 3 chapters of critical resistance operating in Chicago between 2005 and 2012 tend to be forgotten because they didn't have tangible results for their audacious campaigns, including the 2011 Leave No Child Behind Bars demand to shut down the largest juvenile jail in Chicago. Normative evaluative logics of success, a win in passing legislation, creating a policy, or a large and permanent organization, something tangible or deliverable, are internalized and sometimes produce shame. What did we even do? We failed. No, it didn't fail. It conscientized people. But as abolition feminism reminds us, while changing laws and policies might be necessary, it's never sufficient, especially when those laws cannot be upheld by state systems. In this ecology of abolition feminism, the slow and urgent time of movement means that some of the most critical relationships and shifts are often unrecognizable as wins, but these rarely acknowledged and sinewy genealogies that tether movements and campaigns across time and place continue to spark freedom. Just listening to a random person on the arse end of the world speak about abolition can spark an idea, can spark change. Knitted together in delicate relationships by doing the hard work to forge radical possibilities. BYP's Fund Black Futures would not have been possible without Insight, or YWEP, or the Chicago chapter of Women of All Red Nations. Chicago's critical resistance chapters deepened conversations about abolition that reverberated throughout the summer of 2020. Chicago Freedom School is possible because of Betty Albano. Chicago legal advocacy for incarcerated mothers made feasible organized networks like the Prison Plus Neighborhood Arts and Education Project. In 2019, the Chicago Community Bond Fund began meeting with Resilience, a large service organization in Chicago responding to sexual assault. Resilience and the CCBF met to connect the work of eliminating cash bond with the imperative to support sexual assault survivors. These tenuous linkages, often invisible, are crucial. Yet the dominant and mainstream understanding of history, of the ecology of social and political change, is intentionally narrowed. It is whitewashed and straightened, and always in search of individuals and not collectives, policy, legal, legislative wins and not processes or actions, and certainly not education or cultures that create new capaciousness for radical political consciousness. I'd like to think that what I am doing here is capacious, that it is brave in the face of everything that not just I as an individual have gone through, but everything that we as a community have experienced. It is audacious in the face of empire. To continue to educate, to continue to believe that a better world is possible, we have to have the audacity. We have to have the audacity to believe that we can do something better, that we can be better, that ultimately we can create a society that works for everybody who lives in it. We have to be brave. Organized forgetting and erasure is not the only challenge. And it is organized. It is erasure. It is specifically designed to erase the work of organizations and individuals who didn't, quote unquote, win under their metrics. We have to refuse their metrics if we are going to have any semblance of a win. Because these forms of wins were designed by empire to evaluate our action. And we have to reject everything that empire tells us is good. Many of these small networks fracture as a result of pressure from either funders or others to expand, scale up, streamline, or brand, or to provide a service rather than just organize, focus on policy work, not base building, elevating a single charismatic leader or director instead of focusing on the collective, network with legislators and not ordinary people. All of these dichotomies have been created so that grassroots movements can be undermined, and funders can say you're not doing anything tangible. Successful organizing that mobilizes people and makes effective demands on the state is sometimes co-opted and absorbed because of the carceral state's ability to beckon accommodation or to conjure disappearance out of every progressive impulse. The US wants heroes. It doesn't want change. And how do you create heroes? You create the adversity. The land of the free? Absolutely not. Home of the brave? I would argue yes. The Chicago Police Department even has an Office of Restorative Justice Strategies, complete with its own Twitter feed. Co-option can mean professionalization, ultimately tethered to whiteness, and the disqualification of those who have been doing the work effectively without credentials or pay, and the reformation of movements and mutual aid into social service agencies and charities. And we need to resist that co-option. Because it always feeds into whiteness, capitalism, and ultimately the state's goals of appeasing the people instead of serving the people. Professionalization can also individuate by rejecting collectives and community, commodifying and privatizing skills, knowledge, and sometimes histories. For example, since paid employment has opened up for restorative justice practitioners and experts, many of these positions can now only be filled by someone with expensive certifications and credentials. These forms of co-option, attention and pressure from big philanthropy propel a narrative of failure. We tried that, it didn't work. Organized disappearance persists. Yet these forms of co-option are also another indication of our power. It is inevitable that mainstream political responses to movements will attempt to reject radical understandings of social problems, such as the prison crisis and the gender violence pandemic. Nonetheless, it is precisely our own tenacious involvement in these campaigns that pushed others in this direction. Far from being a failure, an abolitionist feminist ecosystem, toolkits lost on the internet, study and action groups that leaned into the former and forgot the latter, indie documentary screenings, small clusters of militant picketeers, campus groups that erupt and dissipate, generated an ecology that sustained the idea that prosecuting any one police officer could not be our solution. After sentencing, Jason Van Dyke did not immediately become one of the almost 40,000 people in the Illinois Department of Corrections. White people comprise 65% of the state's population and only 30% of the state's prison population. As is typical in the rare cases when police are actually convicted and sentenced, he was initially transferred to Connecticut to serve his time in a federal prison. Months after he was sentenced, his wife Tiffany announced that her husband had been assaulted in prison. She pleaded for information about his whereabouts and condition. She said, "I don't know if he is safe at the moment or the extent of his injuries." Despite her requests for information for protection for her husband, the Bureau of Prisons refused to provide any additional information beyond acknowledging that an assault had occurred and that the standard procedure required Van Dyke's segregation in the SHU, or the Secure Housing Unit. A Chicago Tribune headline seemed to summarize the moment. "We can't blame Tiffany Van Dyke for trying, but her husband is just another convicted felon." Just like that, for some, Van Dyke moved from being police to felon. Perhaps he is in a prison where active organizing is underway to raise the visibility of deaths in custody. Perhaps his loved ones joined the brigades of people in car caravans who procured and delivered masks and medical supplies for people inside during COVID-19. Perhaps. The work in Chicago highlighted in this chapter is dynamic and ongoing, and our antecedents stretch beyond the artificial temporality of this chapter. From the journalist and anti-lynching organizer Ida B. Wells to the communist labor and justice organizer Lucy Parsons, from Jane Collective to Amigas Latinas, Chicago is rooted in radical change. Abolition feminist organizations emerge from and with strategies and analyses from the previous laborers. Out of necessity, people experiment and practice with the tools at hand. As the COVID-19 pandemic ebbs and deepens across the globe, the pandemic of prisons industrial complex exists alongside the pandemic of gender violence. As people strain to support loved ones, as organizers strategize along people surviving pandemics of COVID and criminalization and gender violence, and as groups, campaigns, and political formations continue to demand freedom from injustice that reverberate from stateful prison to Palestine, we are organized by the passionate commitment of abolition feminists now. Despite what some might wish, including us on some days, there is no finish line, no firm, resolute end, and yet it is hard not to read this and want concrete steps, checklists, guarantees, a roadmap. We acknowledge this desire, yet, as this chapter on Chicago reminds us, and as Chicago poet and educator Gwendolyn Brooks beautifully notes, we are our roadmap. We are each other's harvest. We are each other's business. We are each other's magnitude and bond. This partial Chicago archive offers a robust answer to that most important question. What do we do now to build abolition feminism? And that is the chapter. And I'm going to continue with the epilogue, because we're at the end. How to draw a line when the work is unfolding and unfinished. No one wanted to end this project. As organizers and writers, this caused us anxiety. Sending this book to press will cement what are fluid conversations and in-process ideas. In campaigns and on-the-ground projects, a complexity of the collective doing or making is not fully documentable. Yes, we can surface interviews with participants, meeting minutes, event posters, or additional materials, often framed as evidence or ephemera. Yet the gaps and messiness, the heartbreak that make a particular kind of sense of engagement do not necessarily translate well into written words, and their omissions can potentially read as errors in textual projects. Hi, JJ. As scholars, even though we know histories are incomplete and contested, and we intend this book not to chronicle any full story, we still feel pulled toward continuing to add more, to expand on examples and moments, to contextualize and deepen as the world around us changes so rapidly. There are so many places in this project that could be a book in itself. For us, it does feel rather audacious to stop anywhere, here, particularly in a political moment where the virtual world is expanding. Daily, with brilliant abolitionist and feminist tools and resources and demands. Yet simultaneously, we know that explicitly partial genealogies are useful not only because they remind us of the fictions at the core of any chronicle that passes as complete, but also because they can interrupt a desire for reading social movements, organizations, and people hieroglyphically. Our labor and the work that precedes it is neither perfect nor finished, and neither are the movements, organizing, analysis, campaigns, and networks to come. Our snapshots aim to offer brushstrokes, a plurality of places to seek out more, an invocation to rigorously study and engage present, past, and future. The work of collectives and campaigns, rather than just a fixed point of departure or dogma. Despite our goal to not make this a comprehensive historical account but a provocation, abolition is unthinkable without feminism, and our feminism is unimaginable without abolition. We recognize that many people read this project and want templates, detailed chronologies, definitions. Indeed, while we might be pressured to desire these at times, we understand that the forms of carceral logic that compels us in these ways, recognizing that abolition feminism that we hope to advance through this book necessitates our liberation from the tendency to get answers quickly. The now in the title of this book connotes our feeling of urgency, and it is meant to encourage thoughtful and principled action. It is not meant to suggest that there is an answer within reach in this moment. We mean ask different questions now. Consider alternative courses of action now. Engage with more people now. Complicate the analysis now. Change our minds, apologize, recalibrate, and try again now. Now is the time for mutual aid and self-care. Now is the time for righteous anger and settling into this painful reality of the carnage that prisons, policing, detention, all forced confinement have created for us. We must be reminded right now of how rape, battering, stalking, criminalized sex work, targeted violence towards trans people, removal of children from families is ruining lives. And now is the time to grieve those lives lost from various pandemic, uncontrolled fires, hurricanes, earthquakes, unending war, racial capitalist exploitation and occupation. Rather than offering the now as an endpoint, as in at last, we offer it as a critical and joyful starting point. As we worked on these chapters, adding and refining words and examples, remembering names and events, we also learned about yet other campaigns and organizations that, as we solicited feedback from valued comrades. Yeah. Gratitude to Rachel Kado, Mimi Kim, and Asha Ransby Spawn, Erin Ife, Sangeeta Ravichandran, and Mariana Green. Deep appreciation to Sarah M. Benson. We also recognize the many, many others named and unnamed whose thinking and practice informed this book, and acknowledge the incredible labor of the Haymarket community, including Anthony, Arnov, Dao, Tran, and Naomi. As we talked and wrote, around us the landscape kept changing. Over the 2 years we worked directly on this project, both feminism and abolition assumed new political standpoints. Me Too, Time's Up, and Defund Police propelled enormous and widely divergent cultural and political shifts. As the context transformed, the stakes and audience for this book rose and morphed. As Abolition Feminism Now documents, our movements are directly responsible for this changing landscape. Our collective labors power these cultural and political shifts. Our campaigns, demands, organizing, posters, workshops, marches, memes, tweets, webinars, scholarship, actions, manifestos, and so much more, most produced and circulated outside of the formal economy. We are particularly energized by the proliferation of an expanding virtual world that surrounded us as we wrote. Come on, puzzle piece, do your thing. Hey, thank you. Zoom calls with people in prison, virtual convenings and webinars, Snapchat threads, FaceTime calls in cars and along public transport. This surge of connectivity, with access for some, not all, continues to create and strengthen rebellious inter- and intra-movement abolition feminist modalities, internationalist, interdisciplinary, and more. We recognize and feel the impact of this growing body of work every day. Organizing meetings start in new places, rather than simply accepting carve-outs to legislation, such as a post-conviction relief bill that does not apply to people with life sentences or people with convictions for sex offenses. Campaigns are pushing back and refusing to sign on unless these carve-outs are removed. Staff at anti-violence organizations are asking for, and often receiving, internal professional development that centers abolition through transformative analysis and practices. Networks are rapidly producing tools and workshops in response to the FAQs abolitionists frequently engage in, such as the Toolkit, On the Road to Freedom, an abolitionist assessment of pre-trial and bail reforms. Are any of these individual resources or actions the solution? No. But collectively, they shape, deepen, and expand the ecosystem. And that is what we are doing. We are expanding the ecosystem of what it means to resist empire. And while not all of these networks and tools in circulation are necessarily abolitionist or feminist, their invocations and practices and emergent questions or tensions, and yes, even yearnings, seed and strengthen the ground for this growth. Revolution is not a one-time event. Thank you, Audre Lorde. Revolution is not a one-time event. And this is something that Arundhati Roy quoted that we read on Tuesday. Revolution is not a one-time event, as Audre Lorde reminds us, and these networks are making the world we need now. As new formulations surface, others fade. Networks and groups profoundly identify as feminist, queer, crip, black, and or abolitionist. Rattled by their demands and sometimes simply their formation, dominant institutions struggle to contain and manage these movements, and this is what we need to do. Be fucking ungovernable. Just make it impossible for society to function the way they want it to. Be unmanageable. Yes, Ava. 100%. It is ongoing. But yet another diversity committee or another equity officer are inevitably failed efforts to contain insurgent demands. In 2020, at the university that I was doing some work at in Sweden, we said, Black Lives Matter is moving across the world. We've had protests in the city and outside of it, and, students were arrested and whatnot. The university needs to tackle this. The university needs a response to it. The response that the university gave was a diversity committee made out of... Can any of you guess the demographic of that committee? Thanks for the follow, Cassie. It's good to see you. Just hazard a guess. All white men. All white men. A diversity committee of all white men. Yes, in part, the visible identification of networks as feminist or abolition could represent a shallow form of window dressing. We are not interested in abolition feminism becoming another empty signifier. At the same time, these manifestations are also radical fissures, insurgent openings, that cannot be simply boxed up in a diversity committee or dismissed as passé. As we grapple with how to write and finish this project, mainstream news outlets are already predicting the end of the defund police movement. It hasn't ended. Curiously, the complexity of mainstream feminism with gender and sexual violence, the feminist leaders and heads of feminist organizations that shield and advise Andrew Cuomo, for example, has not propelled any death knell for Me Too and Time's Up. But the haste with which these dominant power structures have mobilized to proclaim the end to defund the police illuminates precisely the power of this demand. They want to squash it. Again, this is the abolition feminist imperative of the both and. The need to rigorously pay attention to what came before, but also to move expansively and generatively, and be willing to learn and unlearn. The imperative to reorganize that dominant power structures will attempt, often successfully, to absorb our labor and demands, and yet we still forge new language and practices, and we work anyway. Rather than contradictory, these tensions, painful and pleasurable, are the work. This book is an invitation to readers to write and organize, to create another abolition feminism now. Texts, films, zines, collectives, study groups, parties, and more. Freedom is a constant struggle. We are just one collective that has worked to push forward the linkages between abolition and feminism, and all of our work reminds us daily of the vibrancy of this landscape, the stakes of this work, and the imperative to learn from each other now. And there we have it. Any questions? And these are the appendices, by the way. This is Abolition Feminism Now by Angela Davis, Gina Dent, Erica Miners, and Beth E. Richie. And we have just finished it. If you have not been part of the reading group before and you want to catch up, you're welcome to visit my YouTube, because there are recordings of the readings on there. And just in time, the reading light died. Yes, you can catch up there. I'm going to put everything into a playlist. As soon as each book is finished, I put it into a YouTube playlist. Yes, it is. It's in my link tree. But also, if you can, and I'm not saying that you have to, because we are all struggling right now, if you can, please, can you make a dent in this goal, because a bitch be struggling. And I do these readings for free, so if you can, please do. And I'm going to say good night to Twitch and YouTube. I shall see you all on Tuesday. And please, if you can, if you want to join my Discord server, also in the link tree, but suggest the next book on gender. Let me know which book you want to read as a community, and let's do it, because we're starting a new book next week. Or I may actually take a little bit of a break next week, Thursday, and start the week after. But let me know your suggestions. And take into consideration, and then I'll let you know. I am going to be in the Discord and writing my thesis proposal. So if you want to join me there, please do. And good night, Twitch and YouTube. I shall see you all next week. Bye. And